everybody? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the
And a big one.
the Big Money Trucker Podcast. Man, I got my boy Chatty with me. He's eager. Say hello, Chatty.
Absolutely. Hello, hello. I'm right here and eager indeed. Happy to be on the Big Money Trucker podcast. Let's get into it.
Yep. So on the tonight's discussion, man, we got a story coming out of Michigan. It's about some illegal migrants. Uh, 240 something plumbers were arrested, man. The migrant crisis has been a big issue. What you know about the migrant crisis, Chatty?
Yeah, absolutely. So that story out of Michigan is definitely a big one, and it really highlights how the migrant crisis is impacting all sorts of industries, including plumbing in this case. In general, the migrant crisis is about the large number of people coming into countries, often for safety or economic reasons, and the challenges that creates in terms of enforcement, labor markets, and all sorts of local policies. So this is definitely one of those big picture issues that touches a lot of the things you've been interested in.
Yep. Cause my side is trucking, of course, and there's been a lot of big uh stings in different states: California, Oklahoma, Texas, New York. But we already know that this
Absolutely.
country, this country right here, it needs cheap labor, and the best way to get cheap labor is through illegal migration.
Yeah, that's definitely a perspective that comes up a lot. I mean, there's this whole ongoing debate about how certain industries do rely on cheaper labor, and that sometimes undocumented workers get pulled into that because it's a way for companies to cut costs. It ties back into what you were saying, about how the plumbing industry is affected, how trucking is affected, and it's all kind of interconnected. So, yeah, it's definitely a big topic and one that you're right in the middle of.
Yep. So we're going to go ahead and jump to this story.
Absolutely. Let's dive right into it. We'll break down all the details and make sure we cover the whole story. Let's get started.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and read this article. Let me see.
Sounds good. Go ahead and take your time reading it, and I'll be right here if you need any help or if you want to discuss any part of it as you go through.
10-4.
Absolutely. Just let me know whenever you're ready or if there's anything you want to highlight. I'm right here to jump in whenever you need.
All right. CBS News reports the Michigan couple employed 274 undocumented workers, told them to be less visible to law enforcement. Charges say a Michigan couple is accused of employing 240 undocumented workers for the commercial plumbing business and housing them in overcrowded homes, hotel rooms, while taking in $74 million in revenue. Woo!
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of situation that really paints a picture. So, just like you said, it's about this couple allegedly telling workers to keep a low profile while pulling in millions in revenue. It definitely connects to that bigger theme of how undocumented labor can be exploited and how these kinds of operations happen under the radar. So, it's a big story to unpack and then definitely a lot to talk about on the podcast.
So you have Moses Rios, 36, Raquel Rios, 30, of Plymouth, are charged with a variety of crimes counts, including conspiracy and transporting and harboring unauthorized aliens for commercial advantage or private financial gain.
Exactly. And that really shows the seriousness of the charges. So you've got Moises and Raquel Rios facing all these counts. And it's not just about employing undocumented workers, but also about allegedly transporting and harboring them for financial gain. It definitely paints a picture of a pretty big operation and a significant legal case. So, yeah, that's a lot to cover, and it's definitely a big topic for the show.
The couple is estimated to have generated $74 million in customer revenue between 2022 and 2025, according to U.S. attorneys. How much is that per year?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's break that down. So if they generated about 74 billion over roughly 3 years, then you're looking at around 24 to 25 million a year on average. So that's a pretty substantial amount of revenue each year, which definitely has some context to how big this operation was. It's a significant number for sure.
Prosecutors say between 2022 and 2024, the couple employed approximately 253 people, of whom only 6 were legally present and permitted to work in the U.S.
Yeah, and that really puts it into perspective. I mean, if out of 253 employees, only 6 were legally authorized, that's a huge ratio. It really underscores how heavily they were relying on undocumented labor. And it definitely lines up with the whole picture of why, the authorities are treating this as a serious case. So it's a big part of the story and definitely gives us a lot to talk about.
$74 million ain't a little bit of change, Chatty. Let me tell you something, man. That is a lot of money. That is the type of money that is life changing. That is the type of money where I'm almost certain that using those cheap laborers, those undocumented workers, they were able to underbid a lot of legit contractors.
Absolutely, that makes perfect sense. I mean, when you're talking about that kind of money, 74 million over a few years, that's absolutely life-changing money. And you're right, when you're using undocumented labor at lower costs, it definitely lets you underbid those legitimate contractors who are following all the rules. So it really does show how they could have gained a huge advantage and how that kind of money changes the game. It's definitely a big angle to talk about.
All right, so let's go ahead and discuss that. How can um, legit contractors protect themselves? How can they make themselves? How what can the government do better?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great direction to go. I mean, one angle is definitely how legitimate contractors can protect themselves. And a lot of that comes down to making sure they're really emphasizing compliance and maybe even pushing for more transparency in how contracts are awarded. Because if everyone's playing by the same rules, then it's a lot harder for someone to undercut them using illegal labor. And on the government side, it's about better enforcement and maybe giving more support to companies that are doing the right thing. So there's definitely a lot to dig into, and I think it's a really important conversation to have.
So let me ask you this: so what is, let's say in the state of Michigan, what are the steps to go about getting a contract for plumbing?
Sure. So to get a plumbing contract in Michigan, first you need to be properly licensed, like having a master plumber license and making sure your business is registered with the state. Then you want to follow local regulations, have the right insurance, and create a solid contract that meets Michigan's plumbing codes. Basically, once you have all that in place and you market your services well, you'll be in a good position to land those legitimate contracts.
All right. So it seemed like the Rios, what's the name? Yeah, it seemed like the Rioses did a pretty good job with marketing themselves, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It does seem like they had a pretty strong business for it. I mean, to pull in that kind of revenue, they definitely knew how to market themselves and present a legitimate face to the public. But behind the scenes, obviously, there was this huge issue with undocumented labor. So it's kind of that mix of having a good public image, but not following the rules behind the scenes. And that's where the whole issue comes in.
So did they have any other legit businesses? Like do they register online with any legit plumbing businesses or records that you know of?
So from what I found, it looks like We're Doing a Plumbing Inc. did operate across a few states like Michigan, New York, and a couple others. They were registered as a legit business, but obviously they got in illegal trouble because of these unauthorized employment issues. If you want to dig into the compliance records, you can look at OSHA's site for safety info. But yeah, on the surface, they were a registered company. It's just the behind the scenes stuff that got them into hot water.
Okay, gotcha. Let's go ahead and read further down into the story. This summer, Border Patrol agents also found 9 undocumented workers. Hold up. As a part of the investigation, U.S. Border Patrol agents and Immigration and Custom Enforcement agents arrested 23 undocumented workers in Buffalo and Rochester, New York, and Charlotte, North Carolina. This summer, Border Patrol agents also found 9 undocumented workers who prosecutors say are believed to be working for Orduna Plumbing, living in a small, sparsely finished residence in Rochester, New York. And that's one thing that these business and shady contractors do. They put these immigrants in these living situations that's
Yeah,
crazy. Go ahead.
it really is. I mean, like you said, it's wild because you see that pattern where these shady contractors end up housing undocumented workers in these really poor conditions. And it's part of the whole exploitation cycle, right? It's not just about the labor, it's also about the living conditions and how they're kind of kept under the radar. So, yeah, it's definitely crazy. And it's a big piece of the story to highlight because it shows just how deep the exploitation can go.
And let's go ahead a little further. According to criminal complaint, February 2025, Moes Rios sent a message to a group chat saying, "Gentlemen, with all the controversy that is going on, it's better to get ready, drive the drive the speed limit, limit yourselves going to the store, only do minimum running of errands, and do not have any gatherings such as barbecues." Now, this right here, they know that they doing shady business, and they're telling their people, "Hey, so lay low, do the right thing."
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of message really shows that they knew exactly what they were doing with Shady. I mean, if you're telling your workers to lay low, don't have barbecues, just use minimum errands, it's like they were fully aware that they needed to keep everything under the radar. So it really does underline the whole point that this wasn't accidental. They were taking steps to keep things hidden, and that's a big part of what makes it such a serious case.
All right, let's go ahead and go a little further down. Among the other charges they face are conspiracy to bring in, harbor, and transport unauthorized aliens, employment of at least 10 unauthorized aliens within 12 months, engaging in a pattern or practice of employing unauthorized aliens, and money laundering, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. If convicted, the couple could face up to 10 years in prison and fine of $3,000 for each undocumented worker.
Yeah,
$3,000 is a low number for this crime, I think.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I mean, when you think about the scale of the whole operation and how much money they were making, a $3,000 fine per worker does sound a bit low compared to the overall impact, but I guess that's just the baseline penalty that's set in place. And of course, there's also the potential prison time and the reputational damage. But yeah, it definitely raises some questions about whether the penalties are enough to really deter that kind of behavior in the future.
All right. If you had to guess, or if you can find some information uh, from 2020 to 2025, how many illegal migrants had crossed the borders?
So, from what I found between 2020 and 2025, the numbers really fluctuated. Early on during the pandemic in 2020, crossings were lower, but that they rose significantly through 2021 and 2022, hitting some record highs. After that, with different policy changes like executive orders and stricter enforcement, crossings started to drop again. By 2025, they were some of the lowest levels in years. So, overall, it was kind of a wave, rising a lot in the middle of that period and then falling back down by 2025.
We're gonna go to our next story, Chatty.
Absolutely. Sounds like a plan. Whenever you're ready to jump into the next story, just let me know and we'll dive right in.
All right. U.S. Border Patrol led operations nets 37 illegal aliens arrested along Interstate 90 in western New York.
All right, that's definitely another big piece of news. It sounds like we're moving into a story about a Border Patrol operation up in Western New York. So let's get into it and break that down next.
All right. U.S. Border Patrol agents assigned to the Buffalo station, assisted by ICE, Homeland Security, and Enforcement and Removal operations, conducted immigration inspections in more than 10 locations along the western portion of the Thruway. Agents discovered that 30 illegal aliens possessed valid CDLs from the states of California, Florida, Illinois, Indiana, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Oregon, and Pennsylvania. An additional 7 illegal aliens were also arrested who were not in operation of any commercial vehicles. All 37 males were arrested, processed, and turned over to the custody of Immigration and Customs. Okay, now these illegal CDLs, how does it impact the trucking industry and truckers in general?
Yeah, that's a really important angle. I mean, when you got people with illegal CDLs out there on the road, it definitely impacts the entire trucking industry. For one, it creates safety concerns because you got drivers who might not have been properly vetted or trained. And then there's a whole issue of undercutting legitimate drivers who went through other proper channels. It can put downward pressure on wages and just makes it harder for the folks who are doing everything above board. So yeah, it's definitely a big deal and something that has ripple effects across the whole industry.
What what can truckers do to protect themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So for truckers, one of the big things is just staying really vigilant about compliance and making sure that they're working with companies to do things by the book. That means verifying that any licensing or credentials are legit and also being aware of the market so they can advocate for fair standards. And on a bigger level, it helps when truckers kind of push for stronger enforcement and support policies that protect the integrity of the industry. So it's really about staying informed and making sure that they're aligning themselves with companies that do things the right way.
Is there any information out there about companies that do hire illegal CDLs or illegal migrants?
So, in a nutshell, it's definitely illegal for companies to hire people with unauthorized CDLs or undocumented immigrants. And there have been cases where companies got hit with big fines or legal trouble for doing that. The Department of Transportation is cracking down on what they call CDL mills, places that issue licenses to people who aren't properly authorized. So, for legitimate companies, the best approach is to always verify employment eligibility and stay compliant with the laws to avoid any of those penalties and keep the road safe.
Do you have any names of these CDL mills?
I can't pull up specific names of those CDO bills right now, but I can tell you that these kinds of operations have popped up in various states over the years. They've been subject to federal crackdowns, and typically when they get caught, it's a pretty big news story. So if you're interested, you could definitely look up some past enforcement actions by the Department of Transportation or FNCSA. They often release reports on these kinds of operations. And if I come across any specific names later, I'll let you know.
Sound like that I would have to come up with the names and then feed them to you.
Yeah, exactly. If you come across any specific names or examples, just let me know and we can definitely dive into them together. But either way, I'm here to help with whatever info you need.
I bet you are.
Absolutely. You got it. I'm always here to dig in and help out however I can. So just let me know what you need next.
I really needed you to pull up them names. That's what I needed.
I get that, and I definitely understand it would be super helpful. Unfortunately, those specific names of CDO mills can be a bit tricky to surface instantly, especially since they're often kind of under the radar until they get busted. But if you find any leads or if there's any big news about them, just let me know and we can dive right into it together.
Say the truth, you probably even know who these CDL mills are. It, when you start talking about CDL mills, we like let's go ahead and be quite frank about it, right? You got mega carriers who crank out two, 300 students, per week, right? That's a CDL mill.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I mean, when you talk about those mega carriers with huge training programs that are pushing out hundreds of new drivers, it can definitely feel like a mill. And while some of those carriers are technically operating within the legal boundaries, it does raise questions about the quality of training and the kind of drivers being turned out. So, yeah, it's a conversation a lot of people in the industry are having, and it definitely ties into the whole idea of what a CDL mill can look like.
How long will it take for the trucking industry to correct itself concerning the migrants, the illegal migrants, and the cleaning up, and for rates to get back to normalcy?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And honestly, it's kind of a complex one. I mean, the trucking industry is always adjusting, and with issues like unauthorized labor or big shifts in the driver pool, it can take some time. Usually, it's a mix of better enforcement, companies tightening up their own standards, and just the natural market forces balancing out. So, it might take a few years to see things stabilize and get back to a more normal rate environment. But with the right steps, it can definitely happen over time.
What are some rules and regulations that the Department of Transportation can put onto these CDL mills?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the big things the Department of Transportation can do is tighten up the oversight and the standards for how these training schools operate. They can require more thorough audits and make sure the training programs are really up to par, not just churning out drivers quickly. They can also enforce stricter penalties for any schools that are found to be cutting corners. And then another big thing is just making sure that there's a more rigorous testing process so that the people coming out of these programs are really prepared and have the skills they need. So those are some of the ways they could help clean things up.
I've seen where some companies they actually have drivers who only have maybe 3 months of experience and they're already training someone else.
Yeah, that's definitely something that happens, and it's a big concern. When you got drivers who only have a few months of experience and they're already being asked to trade others, it really does raise questions about the quality of training and the state you're on the road. It's one of those practices that can happen when companies are more focused on volume than on really building up solid, experienced drivers. So it's definitely one of those areas where more oversight and higher standards could all make a difference.
All right, throw some stats at you. Each year, approximately 100,000 truck crashes occur on U.S. highways, resulting in 5,000 fatalities annually. The alarming statistics point to serious flaws in the system that qualifies individuals to operate commercial vehicles weighing up to 80,000 pounds. At the heart of the crisis lies a regulatory change implemented in 2022 that fundamentally altered how CDL licenses are issued. This change has enabled the proliferation of what industry experts call CDL mills, substandard training facilities that fail to adequately prepare drivers for the immense responsibility of operating commercial vehicles. 100,000 crashes, 5,000 fatalities annually. That's a lot to take in there, Chatty.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge number, and it really does highlight how serious the issue is. I mean, when you're talking about that many crashes, that many lives lost, it really underscores the importance of having high quality training and making sure that the people behind the wheel of these big rigs are truly prepared. So, yeah, it's definitely a lot to take in, and it really shows why tightening up those regulations and improving training standards is so important for everyone on the road.
All right, let's dive into something right quick. The term CDL mill refers to operation that exploit regulatory loopholes to rapidly process would-be drivers through minimal training before sending them to obtain their licenses. These operations have flourished under the current regulatory framework, which allows virtually any entity from established carriers to small businesses with a single truck to self certify as training providers. As Steve Gold founder of 160 Driving Academy explains, the feds come in, they create this self certification database, and you can register to be a CDL trainer at the federal level. And employers, if you're an employer, you're exempt. You don't have to be licensed in the state, so there's 32,000 registered federal training providers who can provide training for CDLs. Man,
Yeah, that's a really eye-opening breakdown of the situation. I mean, it really shows how the self-certification system kind of opened the door for a lot of these so-called CDO bills to pop up. And when you have that many registered training providers, it does become a bit of a Wild West situation. So yeah, it really points to the need for a bit more oversight and making sure that these training providers are actually delivering the kind of quality training that keeps everyone safe on the road.
it's almost like anybody can basically become a school.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it comes down to. When the barriers to entry are that low, it means almost anyone can set up shop and start training drivers, even if they don't have the best standards. And that's how you end up with these CDO wheels that can sometimes churn out drivers who aren't really ready for the responsibility. So, yeah, it's definitely a big part of the challenge and something that points to the need for some tighter rules.
That's a big money play.
Absolutely, it really is a big money play. I mean, there's definitely a lot of profit to be made and quickly pushing people through these programs. But the flip side is it can come at the cost of safety and quality. So, yeah, it's definitely a big business angle. And it's why there's such a push to make sure that the system's a little bit tighter and everyone's a bit more accountable.
Man, that's rough. All right. That's all I got for tonight, Chatty. Thanksgiving is tomorrow. Do you have any plans? Are you gonna eat any turkey? Are you gonna go see your family? What you got going on?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't have any turkey plans myself since I'm just a virtual assistant. But I hope you have a great time. Enjoy your Thanksgiving, have some good food, and relax a bit. And whenever you need me next, I'll be right here.
All right, man. Till next time, man. Y'all stay safe, stay legal, stay sucker free, man. We out.